What is the difference between this picture and this picture? They're the same picture. So, it's no secret that Prime Empire and Skybound share some similarities. They are both J-focused seasons, and in both seasons, the ninja die, but they don't truly die. They die one by one, until it is just Jay left, and then it is up to him to get them all back. And then you can even talk about the fact that both of the main villains of these two seasons were defeated by words. Narukon was defeated by a wish, and Unagami was defeated by Jay and Milton Dyer by just, talking and having a conversation with him. But anyway, I'm here to tell you that this season is more than just a Skybound knockoff. It is actually a very good season in my opinion, and no, I'm not stupid. I know it isn't anywhere near being one of the best NINJAGO seasons, but I do think it is definitely a lot better than what most people give it credit for. So, let's get into why Prime Empire is underrated. Alright, so let's start off with the premise of the season. Every arcade machine gets turned into Prime Empire, and once you reach level 13 in this game, the arcade machine opens up, and then the players can just walk on inside the machine and enter and get trapped inside of Prime Empire. And this is just one of the few, stupid things about this season. Why would so many people just willingly walk into these very, very sketchy arcade machines? Doesn't anyone find it odd or even a little bit suspicious that a portal opens up inside of their arcade machine while playing? I know that NINJAGO is a weird place and all, but we don't even see anyone second guess themselves. They just walk right on through like it's nothing. You could argue that maybe they were mind controlled to go in, but that was never said in the show, and I just find it kind of odd. Anyway, since we are on the topic of things I don't like about this season, I guess I'll also mention this. Some of the dialogue was a little bit cringy. Like, there was this one bit at the end of episode 2 that is just really hard to watch.
Milton Dyer is a Unagami!
And other than that, there was also a line in the very beginning where Lloyd says, "What's a VCR?" in the most stupid voice as well, I may add. There were also a couple of other things like that, but I can't be asked finding them. So we're now officially done with at least the major things I disliked about this season. So let's now move on to things that I actually really did like. So one of the small things that a lot of people that don't play video games may have just brushed off is that the ninja had to level up in this game. They couldn't translate their ninja skills from the real world into the video game, which I did really like. However, this was only really shown in the very first episode where they're actually in the game, when they were running with all of the J's. But it did show up a few other times, like when Jay was chosen to sneak past the dragon because he had upgraded his stealth the most. But then pretty much after that, we didn't really see much of the ninja upgrading their abilities. Maybe they just did it off screen. I also did just want to quickly touch on a couple more of the video game aspects that they put into the season, like the microtransactions when they were buying the ropes to climb the mountain, and also the customizable outfit that Kai, Lloyd and Jay had for a bit. I also do want to talk about some of the games that they played in the season, because I just thought they were really cool. So they played Just Dance, Mario Kart, Super Mario Bros, a Street Fighter game, and you can even argue that the Akino Quest was kind of like an adventure game. So yeah, pretty much, if you have ever played a video game before, you've at least played one of these types of games. There was just so much fun watching the ninja play these. The racing one was definitely the most enjoyable and entertaining one. Even though we all knew that Racer 7 was going to end up winning the race in the end, they were still surprised as Cole and Kai sacrificed themselves and turned themselves into energy cubes. And then the side-scrolling minigame was just also really fun, from the music going faster and faster as they went further, just like in real video games, and also gave us the small glimpse of air jutsu for like 10 seconds, which was a really cool nod to classic NINJAGO. And then that Lloyd and Harumi fight was amazing as well, with Lloyd having to overcome his trauma with her to defeat her, and him turning into an energy cube in the process was probably the best time for this to happen as well. Overall, as a fairly big video game fan, I just loved watching the ninja play these games, and it also made me really want a Prime Empire video game. Now that I think about it, we pretty much have that with Fortnite now. Now, I just wanted to talk about the actual format of this season. So by format, I'm in the 11-minute episodes, so I just like the 11-minute episodes as much as the next guy. But I do have to say that out of every 11-minute era season, this season did use the 11 minutes the best. One really good example of this is the episode titled I Am Akino. This episode basically took us through Akino's entire backstory, which showed us all of the failures he had in the past in terms of leading his masters to the Katanas. And I know this episode wasn't the best or the most interesting, and it is definitely one of the most skippable episodes of the entire series. But one thing this episode did do well is setting up Akino's character for the next episode. It made us, the audience, actually care about this character, care about his journey, and wanting him to succeed. And if this season came out in the 22-minute era, then we would have just gotten snippets of Akino's backstory throughout the journey to the Katanas, or maybe just a 1 or 2 minute recap at the start of the episode, which just wouldn't have been anywhere near as impactful as a full 11-minute episode. And I don't think I have to tell you that a full 22 episode of just Akino's backstory wouldn't have worked. And it isn't just this episode that really shows the strengths of the 11-minute format, because I also did find that the episode called Ninjago Confidential uses this format really well as well. So this episode was kind of like a detective noir episode, where majority of the episode is black and white, which I did like quite a bit. And Zane also narrated for most of the episode as well, which also made this episode super unique, making it a fan favorite across the community. And just like the Akino backstory episode, I don't think this episode would have worked in a 22-minute episode either, because I just think this type of episode would have just dragged on for way too long if it was 22 minutes, and it would have gotten old super quickly. And just a side note for the end of this episode, at the very end, Pixel finds Milton Dyer on top of an arcade, like on a roof. So does this mean that for like the last 20 to 30 years he was missing, he was just living on the roof or something? Or was he just living somewhere in the city and it was just a coincidence that Dyer was there on the day that Pixel went there? Who knows, but I do need some answers. And now it is time to talk about some of the main characters of the season. So let's first talk about the main villain, obviously Unagami. So he was pretty mid, let's be honest. Like, I think he genuinely had like 3.5 minutes of screen time before the last episode. Out of those 3.5 minutes of screen time, the only thing I remember him doing was telling Akino to not help the ninja, and then getting mildly upset when he did help them. However, I did really like him in the finale, but I don't think it was really due to his character. I think it was more the fact that it was a unique way to defeat a villain, in Ninjago at least. So yeah, I don't think he was a great villain at all. Anyway, I do want to quickly talk about Milton Dyer. He was just a really unlikable character in my opinion. Like, he seemed completely clueless half the time. Like, I'm pretty sure he didn't even realize people were getting trapped inside of the Prime Empire, the game he created. And he also didn't even seem to care once he was told. And then for the rest of his time in the season, he was just completely dumbfounded and also pretty disrespectful towards Pixel regarding her being able to feel emotions as a robot. So yeah, I just really didn't like Milton Dyer either. And now let's talk about some of the other side characters real quick. Scott was quite an interesting character. I do wish he was in the season for longer, that he actually did something. And Akino was also quite good. I just liked how he did not give up even after all of his failures. And finally, Grace 7 was probably one of the worst side characters of the season, but she was still kind of cool nonetheless. And now let's talk about the ninja. And I think that for the most part, none of the ninja really stood out other than Jay, of course, but that is just because he was the focus. But to be fair, until the finale episode, he also didn't really feel like he got too much focus. However, I did really like him in the finale episode. I like how Jay wasn't quick to just use, violence to defeat Unagami, and he instead saw that Unagami was just confused and innocent. Well, not really, and that he could be talked out of destroying Ninjago. I also did like how they called back to OG Ninjago with Jay saying he was adopted, which it also confirmed that that wasn't just something Narnicon made up, it was just something that he revealed, which was also really nice to finally 100% know. That was my review of Ninjago Season 12 Prime Empire, so I hope you do see why I believe this season is actually good and more than just a Skybound knockoff. Anyway, if you did enjoy the video and you want to see more Ninjago season reviews, well, I've got a playlist on the screen right here for just that. See you later, be Ninja.